Greetings, folks. Welcome to another one of our Free Friday community classes slash chats, as they have tended to be lately here on the YouTubes. If you enjoy this content, please give a subscribe. Let me know you're out there, and please also scroll down into the video comments for an invitation to a second channel that I'm starting. So with that, this week I wanted to chat with you about the path of the Wortcunner. And the reason I want to talk about this is because as we go through the herbal renaissance that we're going through, and so many people are interested in connecting more deeply to the plants and working with the plants, even beyond just sort of the pop herbalism thing that's happening on social media right now, there's this really interesting way of exploring what this work looks like through the experience of human persons, right? And luckily, we have a good amount of folklore and stories and fairy tales that point gently in the direction of what the Wortcunning folks, the early modern Wortcunning folks' lives may have looked like, or at least we can intuit some of it and plug some of it in from the lore. So, first of all, a wee definition: Wortcunner. The name wart is an Old English term that just means a plant that is worked with for medicine or sometimes food, right? So it's W-O-R-T. And I know that word is a little bit of a turnoff for some people, but it's a super cool ancestral word. It has a lot of really interesting etymology behind it, so it's worth keeping it alive. It's definitely fallen out of favor over the last 100 years or so, but I'm glad that people are using it again because it's a cool word. So Wortcunner, and then cunner implies somebody who is cunning, someone who has knowledge, somebody who has been initiated into the mysteries or the secrets of something. So when we put them together, Wortcunner, we have somebody who works with the mysteries or the secrets of the plants, specifically the plants that bring a medicinal virtue, right? And of course, when we talk about plants with medicinal virtue, we're generally speaking in a somewhat anthropocentric term, that we're saying the medicine is for humans. So these are plants that bring something for humans, right? We're kind of making it about, which is okay sometimes. So Wortcunning folk in the early modern traditions were what we might call the village wise woman, the person who acted as healer and midwife and death doula and diviner for their village or for a particular group of people, or maybe just for a large or extended family. And there's a few things that we can glean about Wortcunning folk from the lore. First is that their entire existence, the reason that they were called a wise woman or an herb wife or whatever, was completely anchored in what they did, right? It's not how they self-identified. It's not what they thought about themselves. It's not based on even any kind of training or certification that doesn't exist that they may have done. It's because of how they showed up. So the Wortcunning people were in service to their community. If they were not in service to their community, then they wouldn't have that title. And this is something we've talked about before, that somebody can call themselves a mechanic, but if they're not fixing cars, they know a lot about cars, but they're not acting or working as a mechanic. There's a subtle but important difference there. So Wortcunning folks were working in service of their communities, and we know from a lot of the folklore that they tended to live a little away from the hoi polloi, right? They tended to live on the outskirts of town, towards the edge of the village, maybe a little closer to the space where the kind of organized and tamed village started to meet the wild spaces, the hedgerows, the forests, the expansive meadows. They would live in these places because it allowed them to keep one foot in the village, so they could keep a pulse on what was happening, what the trends are, what people were going through, but also allowed them to keep one foot in the world of the green, so that they could have the quiet and the solitude and the connection to plants that they would need to learn what they need to know to be in service to their community, right? We have to remember that even only 100 years ago, much of the folklore, most of the plant lore that people were relying on to serve their community was coming through direct personal experience or ancestral initiation. So the herb books, while grimoires and all of that existed, real seed hits the soil kind of knowledge came from somebody just being in relationship to the plants, knowing which plants would be the right choice for individual people or certain times of the year was based on that person's relationship to the plants. And they weren't jumping on Amazon and ordering their herbs all year long. They had the herbs that were available to them at the time of year those plants were available. That's the plants they could work with. So these people were spending a lot of time, a lot of devotion, a lot of prayer, a lot of seeking, a lot of contemplation, a lot of exploration, connecting with the plants and being connected to the plants, because that's the only way this can work, right? So very connected to their communities, but also somewhat set apart. And the solitude part of this is actually really the part of this I think I wanted to talk about this week, that the world is a noisy place, right now I'm mic'd up, so you may or may not hear background, but even just here on this very peaceful patio at my clinic, there's so much noise all the time. And it can be very hard for us to slow down to tree speed, to quiet down to the rustling of the leaves, right? Sometimes we just can't hear ourselves think. Last week when I needed to record a class, and I like when the weather's nice to come out here and record on the patio, I had to wait 2 hours for 3 different groups of people with leaf blowers to stop leaf blowing before I could come record. So there's a lot of noise, right? And that noise isn't just like physical noise. There's also like just the energetic noise. There's just the buzz of the city. I'm here close to the university, so this time of morning, tons of traffic and buses and people walking their dogs and cyclists getting to school, getting to work. There's just a lot of action, and sometimes it can be really hard to find that quiet that we need to really engage deeply with plants. And I talk a lot about tree speed, right? That they operate at a different speed than we do, much, much slower, much, much quieter, sometimes even silent. And as much as it's very hard for the human person to slow down that much, to quiet down that much, to settle in that much, we have to do as much as we can, because it's like us kind of trying to meet the plants halfway, right? And so we have to find, for those of us, trying to model ancient wart-cunning paths or just be connected to plants in any way, we have to find those moments where we can have real quiet. And sometimes that means getting up really early in the morning to go sit in your garden or to go walk through the park before everybody's out walking their dogs, taking their kids out, commuting to work and school. Sometimes it means staying up late, to wait through those quiet times. So early modern wart-cunning folks, one foot in both worlds, keeping a pulse on their communities, but also a pulse on quiet, and living in places where they could be quiet. A lot of us don't have that ability now. I certainly don't. So we have to get creative in how we do that. And the big sort of third thing that I want to talk about, and this is like more of a goal that we should always have, and maybe something that inspires and informs our practice, but it's something that, for the sake of humility, that we should never think we fully have, right? We should always be thinking, I can go further in, I can do more, I can refine and polish and hone my craft. And that is that innate wart-cunner's ability to be a go-between, to straddle the hedge, to have one foot on the side of the hedge in the village and one foot on the side of the hedge in the woods, to be able to enter by spirit and by inner vision and by contemplation and revelation into the paradigm, the world, the perspective of the plants, into the other world, which runs parallel to our own, while simultaneously being fully invested in the human experience, in the human world. So, the wart-cunning folk, all folk doing plant spirit work, the whole point of what a plant spirit path is being having dual citizenship, right? Fully being human in this world. There's no transcendentalism and animism. We're not trying to escape or go somewhere else. We are fully invested in where we are, but being able to enter into otherness, to gather information, to make allyships, to connect with our allies and plant spirits and learn, and then bring that information intact in a relevant way back to the human experience. There's a tangent hidden in this, which we're not going to go on here, but I'll make note to do another class. There's a couple other ones out there already about the difference between the worlds. You know, we are sharing space with plants. There's plants right here. I can physically connect with plants, but our perspectives are very different. If you think about the difference between the human perspective and paradigm and experience and that of an ant, right? We can be in the same place at the same time, but how we experience and dovetail with the world is so different that it might as well be completely opposite, right? The ant's perspective of things and our perspective, we can step on an ant and not even know it, right? So the worlds of otherness are happening in the same place at the same time, but they are parallel to each other. The perspectives are different. So when we talk about engaging with the world of the plants and having dual citizenship, it simply means stepping into a place where the loudest perspective in the room belongs to the green rather than to the human. It means that we get as close to being able to see and feel and experience and perceive the wholeness of things from their perspective as we are able to, as completely different kinds of people, right? And that dual citizenship is hard won. We have to do consistent, heart-centered devotional work to show the plants that we deserve that citizenship, right? To earn our right to become citizens in their world. Many people will get flashes or even periods of time in their life where that phyto-gnostic experience is flowing. They're getting all of these incredible realizations and revelations from the plants, but it fades or it plateaus. So this is the spiritual path of the Wortcunner. The spiritual path of working a plant spirit path or tradition is that our spirituality, our religion is engaging with plants and working with them to cultivate harmony within ourselves and within our communities and thus within our world. So hopefully that has some inspiring points, you know, just a little scratch on the surface. I want to get into some of these more practical discussions where we can look at, you know, what does it look like if we're these people living in a downtown urban area in 2024? How do we try to embody this stuff as best as we can? And I know some folks out there are living out in the country, out in the sticks, and that's awesome. You know, there are places where we can cultivate that if you have access, but a lot of us are living in noisy places and living noisy lives and experiencing noisy things on all the different levels. So I think these conversations can be really empowering and inspiring on how we can move forward in the world. So with that, we'll wrap up for this week. Thank you so much for being here. Remember to subscribe. And again, there's a link to a brand new channel down in the video details below. You're invited. Come over and check it out. See you next week. Blessings, peace, and fun.